Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Writer's Showcase. I'm very pleased to be welcoming a bunch of very, very lovely guests. Let me see. I gotta start off with the usuals. Please first welcome my regular co-host. Why is this being so frustrating? Alrighty, right here. Thing. No! Wrong thing!
Doing?
Ah.
来世の試練よ。
You gave me yo guys.
I don't know what it is, but for some reason, when I was moving the thing, the stupid thing was just like keeping going like way far down or way far up. I don't know what it was. I do not know what it is. I think that this is just like not working, and I am very happy that I'll be getting a new computer soon because I am tired of dealing with this.
Yeah, I bet you are. Hello, everyone. It's nice to see you all.
Yep. We also have our resident Russian speaking Beardy McBearderson. Welcome, Carl Taylor.
I'm preparing my rhetoric so I can properly dissect the corpse of the renegade Republican.
Remarkable Republican. Renegade Cut is
someone else.
Someone else, yeah. Remarkable Republican is like, wow, this is impressive trolling, but it's still dumb. But we also have one last person, our resident dragon screwing bard. Welcome to Tarek.
我が力、我が刃、我が狂気、我が狂気をもて見解せよ。エクスはーうがせエクスプロージョン。
That's my dignity every time you say that. Also, Neph, I must say you are looking lovely today.
Thank you. Thank you, Moth.
It really is.
Yep. Please clarify.
Which of us?
Yeah.
You know what the ultimate irony is, though? There are no dragons in Shadows of Tyrion. So I don't know what I'm fucking.
I don't know either. I don't really want to know either. Alrighty. So, as befits the thing, does anybody have any time constraints, or is this pretty much just normal?
Well, I got the usual, and I'll also be reading one of the stories from Mothmaster.
Mm-hmm.
So I got that one.
Okay. So how about you go first with your thing, and then I'll just do, and then I'll do Wizzy is, and then Neph can go. And then you can read Mothmasters. Sound good?
Yeah, that sounds good. Mine shouldn't be too strenuous. Good warm-up for Mothmaster.
Mhm.
Alrighty.
So this is also a piece from my upcoming sequel to The Gates of Dawn, The Sands of Isafar. And it's related to the piece we saw last week with the entrance of this wealthy industrialist and very, very interesting lady, Miranda Babcock. Although she does not make an appearance in this particular episode.
Carl, before you start, I just got to tell you, I don't like sand, okay? I don't like sand, man. It's rough, it's coarse, and it gets everywhere.
Yeah, I mean not like here, you know. Everything's so nice and
nice and soft.
Well,
Okay, we
Neph
got that out of the
nice-
way.
Well, Neph is nice and soft at least.
Speaking of things that are nice and soft. What a woman, Stolos said as he poured out another crown glass of brandy. I tell you, Bart, there's nobody else in the world quite like our Miranda Babcock. Is this really the best time for a drink, Percy? Hobart said, gazing out through the glass door to the crowd gathering beneath the balcony, eagerly anticipating Lord Stolos's first official public address. He could already hear the muffled roar of the crowd through the glass. It would not do for the realm's first impression of their new sovereign to be that of a drunkard. Oh, just a little something to settle the nerves, Stolos said. You know, I've landed myself in a rather difficult job here. I find it helps to loosen my laces, as it were, every now and again. If you say so, Hobart said, crossing back to take a seat beside his friend. How about I pour out a crown for you as well, Stolos said, already halfway through pouring out the next crown glass. You look like you could stand to loosen your laces a bit yourself. May as well, I suppose. Hobart shrugged and took the brandy, knowing full well that he was not going to drink it. Hobart's father, the previous Lord Franklin, hadn't exactly been a non-drinker. Many were the times he had proclaimed that wine was the rising tide that lifted up the ship of society, or some other such clumsy metaphor. In private, on the other hand, Barnabas Obadiah Franklin had regularly gone to tremendous lengths in order to maintain his sobriety. He'd kept every last bottle of alcohol in the family estate locked away in a chest in the cellar whenever company was not about. He had dismissed servants for drinking during their days off. He had even been known to down 5 slices of bacon before attending social functions where drink would be unavoidable. The bacon grease, so he claimed, would slow the rate at which the alcohol took effect. Although Hobart thought his father's methods a touch excessive in places, he had to admit the intent behind them was all too sound. Drink was dangerous. Useful, but dangerous. Where was I now? Ah, yes, Miranda, Stolos continued. A veritable wellspring of knowledge and insight. I could listen to her for hours. She was telling me about the Freeport connection the other day. You know anything about that? I don't believe I do, Hobart said, trying not to let his tone betray the fact that he had been listening in on the entire conversation, as usual. Ah, Freeport, Stolos said, taking another sip of brandy. No other city in the world quite like it. A city founded and sustained completely by international trade by airship. There's no local agriculture, no timber or mineral deposits. Pitiful offshore fisheries for a seaside town. Isn't even really a proper port. Far too shallow and rocky for deep water navigation. Nothing beyond coastal navigation toward the rest of Illyria. No, it's just a scrap of rocky land jutting out into the ocean like a he gestured with his free hand, like a claw, a fish hook. You know what I mean? Yes, I've seen the maps. Hobart nodded, only half paying attention at this point. Right, of course. Not one of our cities, nor one of Hadvar's. Not even an Alarian, really. a neutral meeting ground between the two great powers. I suppose that's the reason the war never touched it. Too valuable to both sides. Lord Stolos laughed. Can you believe it? We spent the better part of 3 decades trying to kill each other and never stopped trading on the back foot in the meantime. Well, as long as the trade consists of non-strategic resources, Hobart suggested, half-heartedly. Yes, of course. Stolos chuckled into another sip of brandy. The realm needs its bloody tobacco and coffee. We cannot learn to content ourselves with homegrown luxuries. And surely the stability of our domestic industries was a welcome benefit, Hobart said. Stability of domestic industries. You sound like Blackpool, Lord Stolos scoffed. I've also been told that it is wise to leave open a diplomatic back channel in the event that... not that tired old excuse again, Lord Stolos snapped. I've no intention of leaving this coming war half done on a piffling diplomatic settlement. We are going to see this business through to the end, whatever it takes. Forgive me, my lord, Hobart said hastily. Percy glanced down abashedly at his drink and set it aside. Sorry, Bart. It's just... so many people are trying to back out of this coming war before it even starts, playing a peacemaker to serve their own interests. It's disgusting. Yes, I can see how that would be frustrating in your position, Hobart nodded, and set his own glass down, just as full as when he'd picked it up. Miranda understands this business, you know, Lord Stolos said. It's not just knowledge she keeps locked away in that beautiful head of hers. She has a keen insight, and she sees the danger Hadvar possesses, and fully endorses my coming Freeport embargo plan. She's even assured me of her readiness to contract with the army and the fleet for logistical support. You see now, that's the kind of attitude the realm needs right now. Someone who looks at the situation and says, how can I help? Not, how can I help myself? Babcock was helping herself, of course. Capturing major logistics contracts at this early stage would go a long way towards making up for the loss of revenue from the closure of the Freeport connection. Her only serious competition would be from the Blackpool group, and since Lord Stolos made little secret of his disdain for Lord Armand Hannibal Blackpool, the ATC was all but assured a majority of contracts, possibly even an exclusive monopoly. You could dress it up in whatever pretensions of patriotism you fancied, but it was money that truly greased the gears of war. There was a soft knock at the door. Come in, Lord Stolos called out, and quickly stood up to put the brandy away. The door opened, and Lucille, the serving maiden, strode into the chamber. My lord, there is a... Hobart frantically gestured for Lucille to get out at once, but the foolish little thing was already in the middle of the chamber before she realized her blunder. Oh, I'm sorry. Please forgive my impudence, my lord protector. I promise I'll not intrude again. Calm down, girl, Stolos said. Whatever is the matter now? Outside servants are not permitted in the sovereign's presence, Hobart explained. Now, don't worry. I shall impress upon my girl the importance of... Oh, more tired old superstition, Stolos scoffed. Well, go on about your business, girl. It's quite all right. I understand how these things are. Timidly, Lucille approached Hobart and handed him a folded yellow paper. Telegram, my lord, she whispered, and quickly scurried out of the chamber. Hobart shook his head as she left, and broke the seal and began to read. It was Horace again, still inquiring when he was expected in the capital for his formal investiture as Lord Franklin, though with an added question as to why he had not received a response. Hobart's jaw clenched as he read. A load of complete rubbish. The confounded impostor was still trying to filch away with subterfuge and trickery the birthright that clearly belonged to Hobart. No, to Lord Franklin. He was Lord Franklin, damn it! No matter what this pretender said. As Lord Franklin read the telegram over and over, growing ever more furious with each read, the door opened again. This time, Lord Kalstrom led a party of fellow lords into the antechamber. including Wingate, Harlock, Newton, and Blackpool, and one or two others. Kallstrom was proudly explaining the inner workings of his news by radio scheme, and clearly trying not to be offended whenever Lord Newton regularly interrupted him with a correction on a technical scientific matter. Lord Stolas turned about to face his new arrivals. "Is it almost time, then?" "Yes, just about, my lord," Lord Kallstrom said. "We can begin as soon as you're ready. You have prepared your speech, haven't you?" Yes, of course," Lord Stolas said, producing a folded sheet of paper from his coat pocket. "I rehearsed it in the mirror last night. I assure you I'm quite ready for this business." "Excellent," Lord Kallstrom said. "Then we may proceed." Lord Franklin barely noticed the party cross to the balcony door. "Hobart," Lord Stolas called back. "Are you coming with us?" Yes, of course." Lord Franklin, well, Hobart. He just didn't quite feel like Lord Franklin yet. He got to his feet. He'd been gripping the telegram so tightly that his knuckles had begun to ache. Tamping down his boiling anger, he folded the yellow paper and tucked it into a suit pocket, and made to rejoin the group. "Nothing too grave, I hope, Hobart," Lord Stolas said. "One of my relatives," Hobart explained. "He writes to ask when when the ceremony of investiture is to be held." Lord Stolas blinked. "What?" "The investiture of the new lords," Hobart said, and quickly added, "myself included, you understand." He was going to be formally invested as Lord Franklin after all. He would make sure of it. "Bloody hell, more confounded ceremonies!" Lord Stolas let out an exasperated groan. "Is there no end to the pomp and pageantry in this confounded country?" "It is a matter of continuity of society," Lord Blackpool said. "The ceremony is a crucial rite of passage that serves to inaugurate the—" "It is a waste!" Lord Stolas shut Blackpool up with a languid flick of his hand. "An empty relic of a bygone era, and the sooner it is forgotten, the better. This determination to cling to every last scrap of tradition is the sort of attitude that consistently holds back innovation and progress. It will be the death of this country if we let it." "Well, certain traditions can be useful in certain circumstances," Lord Wingate said. "If it lends a sense of greater identity and a unifying national character, a sense of a common shared destiny." "There's the same reason we give out decorations for valor," Lord Harlock added. "Morale is, after all, one of the 3 pillars of victory." "Well, I suppose that is a fair point," Lord Stolas nodded his head, not really feeling in the mood to protest, apparently. "It could also present an opportunity for another radio broadcast," Kallstrom said. "One thing at a time now, one thing at a time." And with that, Lord Stolas opened the door, and the party filed out onto the balcony. And I think we will leave it there. Next week, don't worry, we will be experiencing something that I have written in my notes as the Hitler speech.
Oh,
So stay tuned.
interesting.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that.
Oh, yes.
Neph's holy echo is coming forth.
Oh, I thought that was me
Not
for a minute.
me.
It's not you?
No, it's
Hmm.
not
I didn't
me.
hear anything.
No.
I don't hear it anymore.
Oh, weird.
Yeah. Hello, Blue. Good to see you again.
Hmm.
Oh, hello,
hey,
Blue.
Little girl blue, I guess.
Yeah, I think I'm the echo. Or I was the echo.
Ah, okay.
Okay.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I'm definitely intrigued by all this kind of bureaucratic stuff where
Good.
where they're kind of just figuring out stuff in terms of his new position. It's kind of just
Yeah.
like a like figuring out times and stuff.
I gotta tell you,
don't worry. There is a sort of Indiana Jones style adventure going on with the other characters. If that's not really your cup of tea.
you know what I was gonna say was that when you have an American like bureaucratic thing doing this, it's boring. But when British people do it, specifically the ones from the Victorian era, for some reason, it's far more interesting.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
I think it is. Good.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Neph.
Oh, I mean, especially for the people who are history buffs, because the closer you get to how they would actually react and things like that, it just it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Oh yes.
I truly think the thing that makes it more interesting, and I'm just saying this from a historical perspective, is the fact it is the pageantry. The pageantry of it all makes it far more interesting, just because now it's no longer just a matter of will it get done. It's now a matter of pride too. Like, how good can you look committing a genocide per se?
Yeah.
We'll get to that. Rest assured.
We'll get to the genocide.
Yeah,
It goes to something that happened during the Blitz in the Second World War, when Winston Churchill went out of his way to make sure that the theaters remained open and that performances kept going. And someone asked him, "Well, wouldn't it be safer if we canceled all those theater performances?" And Churchill,
No.
I don't remember the actual quote, but he basically said, "If we don't perform Shakespeare, what the hell are we fighting to defend?"
You know, philosophically speaking, he has a good point. It's just a matter of timing.
Yeah. You do have better accents than us.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
That's all about exposure and imitation.
Is that why the Southern is kind of like the British, but if you lost a few more teeth?
And there's
Something
always
like that, y'all.
Sweet Home Alabama.
Oh God, no.
And then there's the New York, which is a thuggish, thick, working class accent that is just not only used by louts who should not be trusted with anything.
You sounded like Bernie, to be honest.
A nice, smooth tones of the dulcet Boston accent, which is also working class, but it's salt of the earth and it's honest, and you know you can trust this guy. Boston rules. Fuck New York. Go Sox!
Nice.
And
Yeah.
we our errant guest has finally arrived. Please welcome Count Balerion.
Hello, Camp Balerion.
Hello, Balerion.
All right.
I want to now, but I don't want to upset Becca. I have a feeling she's very scary.
Well, she's a very tall, statuesque lady, at least in my imagination. So
That's a fair point. No, wait. I
I'm also quite
apologize.
tall, so.
I apologize. Let me rephrase that. Ah, I see a challenge. Interesting.
Alrighty.
Oh, actually, this is interesting. Mothmaster, Faceless Figure. He asks where I got the idea for my intro. Are you specifically talking about the What a Woman, or the
I think
Charge of the Breast Fortress?
I think the clip
Oh,
that I play for you.
Oh yeah, that was just I liked the Red Alert 3 march, and I looked up if I could find a picture of a Soviet Ura charge set to that music, and YouTube provided.
What does otaku mean?
Otaku?
Otaku or otako?
I would say that means that's just a general anime fan, or specifically like a fan of kaiju movies, I believe.
Oh, that's not what I meant. I meant in the intro.
No, that's not what an otaku is. An otaku is obsessed with everything to do with what their focus is. They have
A certain
everything.
subject.
Yes.
Oh, they're an obsessive. But what's an otaku in the intro when they yell "otaku"? That bit.
That didn't sound.
I don't know.
Otaku. Blah 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 blah.
Oh, that's in
In the intro.
Russian. Oh, okay. I have no idea.
Oh.
Ikuyo? What does that mean? Is that what it is?
It sounds like otaku to me.
Because I know the first thing that they say in Neph's intro video is Ikuyo, which is means let's go.
Let's go.
Itaya. Oh, that's the thing that sounds like Itaya. But I'm talking about your intro, the Russian one. Itaya means let's go.
Bataku. That means let's attack. And then Perion, which means forward. In this context, charge. And then the soldier shouts, "Ura!" which is the Soviet battle cry.
Okay, Ura is clear enough.
Yep.
So Itaya means it's not actually Itaya, it's something else.
It's hang on, I can put it into a clip. I'll put it into a comment later on as soon as I can get it set up. It'll take some time. Oh, God.
Yeah, it did. It did, Becca. It did.
Well, we have our sagely Balerion curmudgeon with us.
That can happen
Indeed, we do.
sometimes.
So, time constraints, Balerion?
Let's see. By about in about an hour-ish, I need to go AFK.
So
let's do you next.
Yeah.
Go next.
Let's see. Are you ready for some rabbits? Half a moment.
Oh, interesting. We're going back to the Watership Down parody. Lovely.
Yes,
I'm considering
lovely.
watching. I'm considering watching that movie. I don't know whether to watch the show or the movie because I know the movie is going to terrify Neph to her core.
I need to see this. I need to see this.
Which movie?
Watership Down. It's a bunny snuff film in animation.
Okay. I think I'd be down for that.
I got back from muting my chat to type in the comments, and that is the weirdest thing to come back on. It's a funny enough film. I'm not sure I want to know the context.
Period.
I'm considering showing Neph Watership Down.
Oh yeah, that one.
Oh, that bunny snuff
that
film.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Otaku. Period. Ura. Yeah, kind of.
You actually don't need to see it. I've never actually seen it. I've just seen like the gruesome bits in compilations on YouTube.
Yeah, I only remember 2 bits. The myth at the beginning is kind of nice with Frith and the sun god, and I remember a bunch of black rabbits killing each other, or killing people, or killing other rabbits, or killing something anyway. So those are the 2 things I remember from the film. The book I remember fine.
Mm-hmm.
I used to read the books like from cover to cover, and then I'd read it over again back when I was 13.
Mm.
So, anyway.
Yeah.
So here we go.
All right.
Then they got to a film. No, I'm sorry. Then they got to a field. It rocked with way-cool grass and stopped imposing your human tastes on the narrative. They made some burrows, but they was kind of lame, except there were dandelions, which had awesome Figgy posters. Figgy, Lord of the Rings, fangirl thing posters, but even that was far from being her best work, because her second sight told her they wouldn't stay long. And the robots were like, oh, wow. So this totally art colony rabbit dressed in lavender with a beret comes and says, "Yo, dudes, you want to join our war?" And it's totally cutting edge and abolishes conventions. And these holes you dug yourself are cool, but let's face it, kind of lame. I'm Catsup. I'm Mustard, said Bigwig, who felt sarcastic. Catsup lolled. That's a lulls, he says. No, they're bad, said Fiver, who was into it and was in a mood. It's true my second sight says their aesthetic covers up bad power structures, kind of like postmodernism is an aesthetic and relies on images. OMG, WTF, LOL, the fascists relied on images. OMG, LOL, but these rabbits would make a totally awesome thesis topic. He's like Dandelion. Okay, we'll go because these holes suck. Stop being a lamer, Fiver, said Hazel. So they go to the Warren, which was totally Sydney Opera House, only it was bright neon. Right. This is so not rabbit. Do they sing like birds? Said Bigwig. Don't be so essentialist, dude, said Dandelion. The rabbits greeted them by breakdancing, but Dandelion was the only one of the rabbits who knew how to breakdance. The others said, WTF? Yo, dudes, we're sending up human greetings, said Catsup. Yeah, said another robot who wore a bright chartreuse bathrobe with mauve polka dots. I'm Strawberry, and I'm totally a connoisseur of art stuff, and cubism is so for hairs. This is my dough. That's a girl rarebit, Noldo hair. And Noldo hair who wear the orange leather bikini and did her ears to look like Figgy said, yo. And Dandelion lolled because art is cool and aesthetics is cooler, but these dudes was totally way overdoing it. And Strawberry toured them around the Warren and showed them a bunch of rocks made to look like a rabbit hero stealing lettuce. This is so klimt, said Dandelion. Yeah, it's old but iconic, and tourists pay lots of dough to see it and get replicas. Sometimes modification is cool, said Strawberry. WTF, said Hazel, who is totally bourgeois. Let's see, move on to the next chapter. Okay. That was cool. Where's the bathroom? Said Dandelion. I prefer Dada, although it's kind of obvious, says Strawberry. Yeah, but where's begun Dandelion, but Straubs interrupted her and said, Husserl is kind of a bore. Is not, because phenomenology rules. Where's, said Dandelion. I gotta go, bye, said Straw and wended away. Some of our rabies go outside to eat. Catnip lolled and said lulls because the catnip warren didn't eat out in the rain because they was wusses. Hazel didn't know what lolling is because he was bourgeois, and bourgeois has like no sense of humor because humor subverts stuff. And like Bachtin says, though, that's kind of old. These rabbits are weird, said Bigwig. They don't answer questions, which shows that despite their totally much vaunted avant-gardism, they're really imposing power structures and bad faith and stuff because they don't let you put them in question, dude. OMG TF. What do you think, Pigpen? Said Hazel. Blah, 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 blah. Let me skip over a bit. You know, on second thoughts, let me skip over to the communist rabbits again. Here we are. Maybe this will leave better. General Moonwartov got it dispossessed because to humans, And Elil's killed his parents, and he got rescued by a nice human who fed him and stuff. But he's like, I'm not going to be hegemonized with a velvet glove and stuff. I'm blowing this joint. So he escaped. So he's post-colonial, and he joined a war, and he's like, I'm your power structure, dude. Because nature abhors a vacuum and stuff. And there wasn't a power structure, so he became one. And he's like, I got to do ideology to shore up the power structures here, and also I got to co-opt the stronger robots so they'll be on my side. So he's like, hey dudes, the common good is what I say it is. That we hide from the humans. They're totally public enemy number one. So we're moving to Alfalfa or Africa or whatever, and I got a system where the humans can't get us until we turn into superhumans and can own them. But first we got to become a power structure, so do what I say. And he won their loyalty by protecting them from Eldars, that's predators, and digging and helping digs and stuff. And he picked the likeliest lads, like Tolkien calls them, and named them officers and gave them privileges. So they're totally co-opted. And he made an ideology called Woundwartism, which says he rules. And he come up with the marks, so rarebits are split up. That makes them easier to control and keep hidden, and it's called Marxism. And he invented the Politburo, that's the council of the smartest robots. And the smartest of all was Snowdrop. He come up with the idea of the marks were separate so diseases and conspiracies wouldn't spread. Also that the warren wouldn't get bigger because it's harder to hide. It's called Marxism in one warren. But Woundwort didn't like this because it meant he couldn't get more power. So he invented the wide patrols, which explored and killed dangerous animals. And if they found rarebits, they made them join the warren or at least become members of Rabintern. So they got into things like they got it to do things like Africans do because they're hegemons. But like I said, they co-opted them by making them owls, that's officers. So they took berries and used them to smear patriotic slogans on borough walls. But lately there was some chinks in the hegemonism because those were getting an attitude or were starting to question straight white male dominance. Because like Uma Narayan says, the development of a feminist perspective that is like committed to anti-essentialism, both about women and about culture, is an urgent and important task for a post-colonial feminist perspective. Apply this insight to alfalfa doses. Totally urgent desideratum dudes. But anyway, we're doing Woundwartov's perspective, which is totally like against the validity of any other ideology or source of power. So from that perspective, the dose was bad because they mise en question if Africa ruled or sucked. And the officers weren't considered as cool as before because people thought they were born in corporate. And then these wandering robots came in and claimed to be feminist. Claimed to be an embassy. That's crap because it implies other legitimate centers of power exist. And they fooled an officer, Bugless, and got away, and we got to demote him. And then a couple other officers got killed by a fox that was after another robot that appeared out of nowhere. And it turned out there was a whole bunch of robots. We got to get them because our ideology is that we're the only robot power structure, said Woundwort. Yes, sir, dude. Is like Captain Chevrolet or Chevy for short. Yo, General Woundwartov, sir, dude, we got the lessee. That's any rabbit not under direct alfalfa rule. Because like I said, we don't acknowledge other power centers in any ways. He wants to join Africa, said Captain. Wants to? WTF, we'll see him tomorrow. I'm busy, is like Woundwort. Okay, dude, sir, but he looks useful to me, not like your ordinary refugee type. This guy got Grombus, and my sentries got him at the crisscross. That's where two bridle paths meet, so it's liminal, says Captain. Okay, fine. I'll meet him now, but I don't got much time. Being a power structure takes time and work, you know. Dude, says Wound Warthog. Let's see how much longer this chapter goes for. Okay, let's see. Pardon me, I'm scrolling. Okay. Maybe another paragraph. Who are you, says Wound Warthog when they meet up with the robot. We know it's Bigwig, but don't say so because we are following the alfalfa perspective. I'm Taylor, says the rabbit. Taylor Sir is like Cap, and that's the verbalization of dominance, but Big's like, whatever. Why do you want to join Alfalfa? Says Woundward. Like, dude, you so don't get PR. You're supposed to be all like, wow, this Warren rules, but you totally underestimate your own coolness. This joint rocks, says Big. And Woundward's like, whoa, no other robot ever said that. What's up? But he didn't say this because you can't undermine your own ideology if you are a power structure. Yeah, but why should we hire you? Says Woundwartov. What can you contribute to our organization, WTF? Because I'm totally badass, pardon me, and can beat people up, and I can spoil a story telling it because narrative is subversive anyway. And I was an officer in an Ausla, is like Bigwig. Can you beat up Captain? Says Woundward 12. Note he doesn't say clever stuff because he got to stay hegemonic. If you want, says Big, and aim will blow at Captain who jumps out of the way. And Woundward is like, don't be a total lamer, dude. Just tell me about your officer experience and don't bother about salary experience requirements because under Woundwardism you don't get any, but there's lots of benefits. I was in an outlaw far away from here, but the humans killed the Warren because they smoked smelly white sticks. That tropes they're bad and probably working class, but I escaped and I heard your Warren is like, wow, so I come a long ways to join it, said Big. Okay, we'll put you as officer in the near hind marks. So Captain Chevy is your superior. He'll bite you, but don't beat anyone up unless we tell you because we got to keep the hierarchy, says Woundward 12. So he got bit by the Marxists. Okay, I think that's enough of that for now.
Balerion, I'm going to be 100% honest with you. 1, I feel like I just woke up from a fever dream. 2, I work with 65, I work with accountants in their 60s and their 50s. They are less of a boomer than you were just now.
I don't even know where to begin criticizing all of it.
My head. My God.
It hurts.
I feel like I said, I feel like I just woke up from a fever dream.
Well, so do I, actually. Maybe we all did.
It is always possible.
Sorry, Hoo-ha. I mean, Dunchap, right, Lord?
No, it's quite funny.
Well, I can honestly say I've never had another story make me feel like I have a fever dream like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dragon Blaster's dumb, but
Dragon
it's
Blaster
understandable.
was less than 1.
That one just made you like, what's real and what's not? What's the narrator and what's done?
At what point did Dunn just say to hell with it?
Yeah.
What's the narrator? Well, I'm not sure what the narrator. I'm not even sure who the narrator and who isn't in my story is either. So there we are.
I truth be told, I would love to see this published as it is right now, no edits, and just see the people who buy it and go, "What the fuck?"
You have to fool them somehow, disguise it somehow with an attractive cover and a blurb that makes it sound, Makes it sound more main.
We'll get famous people to read it on YouTube.
Yeah. Dragon Blast has a well. This is a plot. This has a plot.
It's indecipherable.
Yeah. If there's a plot, there's no plot going on in this chapter.
Well, actually, things do happen. There were a couple of. I did a couple of chapters, which is why might have got confusing. I sort of skipped from one. I sort of skipped.
Yeah, that part too. Hey, I don't feel like reading this. Nah.
Yeah.
Okay, so whose turn is it now?
I think it's mine.
Yeah, you had someone wanted you to read something.
Yes, Wizia wanted me to read.
Can I go after you done? Just ask.
Hang on. Becca votes that Stephen Fry reads Balerion's story. I very much second the motion.
I second that motion, yes.
I third.
Who's Stephen Fry again?
The Master of Lake Town from The Hobbit.
Oh,
He also
Yes, please.
other things. He read the Harry Potter audiobooks. He's also a very famous actor on all sorts of British television. He was
No wonder I love to.
He was in Thieves in
Philosopher's
Worcester.
Stone.
He's
I think that
it
might
is
have been a different guy
impossible
since there's
to
two.
summarize the life and times and spectacular career of Stephen Fry. You must experience it for yourself. He is
well, I experienced the Lake Town chap. I've heard the name before. I'm not good with actors unless they're in Game of Thrones.
That's sad.
Yes, it is kind of sad.
All right, so you're going next, then.
Yes.
Kill
So
Balerion
apparently the book.
immediately, says Becca. Pardon me.
Harris. Well, at least somebody's not yelling "kill done."
Not yet.
all right.
Indeed, not yet. That probably will happen eventually once we cover another Megami Fish video. Either that or you'll be going, can we please go back? Can we please go back to School of Movies? Or can we go back to Framing Monsters? Or can we do Renegade Cut? Or can we do Remarkable Republican?
Well, I think when we do the course, that chap's course. Oh, by the way, I've discovered that a David is a measurement of boredom. Is a unit of boredom in the metric system.
That does not surprise me at all.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, so the book that I'm going to be reading is by Archivist 1276 on Wattpad. And I believe you can find it in link. And it is Wizia on the Discord. So the book is going to be is entitled, so it's called Cataclysm, and this is the prologue. Based on the summary, Earth is lost. Having lost contact with its settlements and suffering technological stagnation, Earth's ancient homeworld is left poorly defended. Then they come, only numbering in legions, a tidal wave of fire rushed across the planet. Prologue. The ancient elevator creaked and clanked as it lowered himself into the depths of the bunker. The lights flickered as they passed Rosa, illuminating her bronze skin and pink hair. Despite the cold, sterile air, Rosa tugged on the white collar of her uniform. Layers of formal black clothing heated her like a steam house. She opened the jacket and unbuttoned her shirt, stopping at her bra and revealing a black metallic necklace underneath. The silence was deafening and left her alone to her thoughts. Rosa's eyes wandered to her right, letting her gaze on the sculpture-like beauty of the woman next to her. Her face was soft and smooth as her own, with amethyst eyes and color like the night sky. Rosa pulled on a lock of her own hair, her lower lip curled. She couldn't look at her, not after what had happened. Rosa tried thinking elsewhere, but the image resurfaced. A woman was lying on the black asphalt ground, an arm etched back with a gun a few inches from her twitching fingers. A gash ran up her pelvis, cutting through one of the woman's large and firm breasts. She remembered the smell, the steam rising from her body, the bleeding, the grimacing of the woman. Such beauty is rare and should be protected. That's what Mama would always tell me. Rosa began to shake. She hugged herself, letting the cloud wash over her head, the gloom oppressing and crushing her. Rosa, a smooth voice rang in her ears, the voice of the Latina standing next to her. Rosa checked back on her twin Sarah Mara Creps Obscura Luna. Maria raised an eyebrow. Are you all right? Rosa, lip quivering, took a deep breath. I'm fine. I just haven't got over it yet. Maria radiated with a warm smile. You know I wasn't going to let you take that hit, right? You should have. Besides, Priv Ithivi there did a good job of patching it up. She motioned her head to the left, drawing Rose's attention to the dark-skinned woman with brown hair and jade eyes. Prithvi's chipped cheeks flushed red. Thanks, Mara. I just wish I could do more to help. Prithvi glanced to her right. Rosa followed her eyes to the shortest and whitest woman in the room, Angela von Wilhelm. Unlike the others, the Heartless Angels had a cute and petite form, blonde hair, but deep blue eyes like Rosa. Angela stood, hands folded behind her back, chin always up, and her glare focused on Prithvi. Lugan? Angela's voice struck like lightning. They weren't shooting at you. You could have popped out of cover and take the shot. Oh, so why didn't you? Rosa's eyes darted back to the sweating Prithvi. The color drained from her face as she tried to speak and found herself cut off. I'll tell you why. It's because you're a spineless fledgling, a coward. Rosa's eyes narrowed at the heartless angels who had earned her ire. Angela, the blonde turned her attention to her. Keeping her temper and speaking firmly, Rosa de-escalated the situation. Come on, it's the Legion's job to rip us apart, not yours. Not ours. Angela, blinking, backed away from Prithvi, her puffy cheeks flushed red. Rosa heard her murmur, Pff, I still think she's going to get us all killed. Maria's voice boomed jovially, catching Rosa off guard. Please speak for yourself, Fayez. Soy demasiado hermosa para morir. I'm too beautiful to die, Rosa echoed. That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, did you just... Rosa's eyebrows shot up. Me, ugly. Hermana, we have the same face. Maria, stunned, glanced at her chest, then back to Rosa's eyes. Yeah, but my boobs are bigger. Maria smirked smugly, lifting her breasts. Rosa placed her hand over her mouth, trying to hide her grin. She started giggling, barely hearing Prithvi's response and not seeing Angela rolled her eyes. Maria, all of us have big tits. Maria grinned. All except for, sawed off! I'm wearing C-cups! My boobs are not... The elevator's brake screeched, cutting off Angela's words and striking Rosa with a sense of dread. Rosa straightened her back, buttoning up her shirt and jacket. The elevator stopped. The door swung open. Behind it was as two male soldiers dressed in gray Kevlar, padding, and urban digital camo. Men were armed with the descendant of the M4A1, a rifle used by the Americans almost 1,000 years ago. Rosa's eyes were drawn to the white letters UN painted onto the sky blue. Ooh, helmets. Goosebumps formed on Rosa's skin. Her breathing cut off. Her chest felt crushed, as though filled with ash. Captain Wilhelm, Sergeant Luna, the director's waiting for you and your team. Rosa clenched her fist and, with a deep breath, regained composure. Let's not keep them waiting. She stepped off the elevator, the rest of her team following behind her, boots echoing through the poorly lit corridor. She tugged her collar, hot air blasting out like steam from a boiler. Her body trembled and quaked, her eyes darting back to the blue helmets of the peacekeepers. It was cloudy. The city still smelled of ashes. Rosa remembered laying on top of Maria, squeezing her between her arms with burned planks of wood against her naked back. Rosa grasped the heart-shaped locket of her necklace, gritting her teeth together and shutting her eyes. Don't worry, Rosa. Today's where the story ends. Tears began to stream from her eyes. This is the part where you go home. Back to Mama and Papa. Tell all about your crazy adventures. Just live a normal life. Her fingers began to twitch, with small quakes and rupturing through her. A pair of charred corpses flashed through her mind, with two small burned bodies not far from them. Her fingers slipped off the necklace, her heart beating rhythmically in her chest. Rosa felt the fire within igniting, seeing the black metal figure responsible. The fire lit it in her eyes, her ferocity coming back to her. For Sod's sake, Rosa, stop crying. Nothing's going to bring them back. All you can do is get justice for them. She walked into the dark chamber, followed by her team. The four stood around a hollow projecting table, Maria to Rosa's right, Angela to her left, and Prithvi by Maria's side. The director will be with you shortly, the peacekeeper said. Rosa didn't mind them, even when the door closed behind them. Rosa placed her hand on the table and slid a finger across it, letting her see how dusty it was. She could hear the door swinging open behind her, the white LEDs outside illuminating the room. Entering the chamber was a white man in a equally white lab coat, looking like he could have been pulled from the 1960s. He walked to the opposite side of the table and set down his holo tablet. Pleasure to see you again, Pink Phoenix. His voice carried an American accent matching the bunker's origin. Rosa crossed her arms. Likewise. You watched him fumble around with the tablet and the interface on the table. Rosa glanced to her right. I changed to see if Prithvi was looking at her. She was, so Rosa nodded to her. Director? She opened and getting her attention. Did you happen to make contact with the lost colonies? Rosa! Angela snapped, drawing the room's attention to her. I thought I told you we are not going to ask such a stupid question. Rosa's eyes narrowed and her shoulders slouched. I don't care. We need to at least try. Angela, snarling, snapped at Rosa. We haven't made contact with them for 500 years now. And now we know why. Rosa's glare faded, the irritation disappearing from Angela's face. The two looked away from each other, their heads hung down. If you two are done, the Phoenixes turned their attention to the director. He stood upright, hands folded behind her back. You four don't know me personally, nor do you have the complete picture of what I'm doing. But you're all aware of what's happening on the surface. Rosa glanced to her right, then to her left. Her shoulders slouched. The fire within had fizzled out. Yeah. So those metal monsters just clean in through any armor we send at them and brush off any weapon fired at them. But we seem to be the only one who can take a hit and kick their asses. Why? Because as of today, it's over. Rosa raised her eyebrow. So did Maria. Prithvi and Angela just looked confused. I'm sorry, what? A direct attack on Dajjal himself wasn't going to stop his legions, even if we wholly aimed the wanker. There was a curl to his upper lip, his fist clenched and shaking. Dread had slowly engulfed Rosa, sucking the air out of her lungs. The UN, or whatever remains of it, has elected to take them down without us. Angela's voice boomed at her. Don't give me that crap! What do you mean, in takes them down without us? Rosa saw him gulp, his quavering voice let loose what was happening. They went MAD. Angela's jaw dropped. Rosa's eyebrows shot up. Mutually assured destruction? Rosa almost giggled, feeling a tear form in her eyes. Yeah, they really did go mad. A voice chirped, hitting her right ear. It was Maria. But Director, what about your side project, the Future Defenders? Rosa watched the director, seeing him take a deep breath. Cancelled. Cancelled? Angela slammed the saber, leaning on it. Why would they cancel it? You said they were ready to go. Because we cut out the middleman, he said, leaning on the table. The light of the holo projector flickered, generating a blue image above the table. It displayed a frisbee shape with a central cylindrical core and 7 cylinders expanding from it. Rosa checked the measurements presented by the projector, confirming that the hulls were 3 kilometers in length, 2 in height, and 1 in width. We're calling it the Ark, he finished, allowing the 4 to examine the massive facility. Rosa crossed her arms again. Her eyes were wide open. It's a pretty big facility. What does it do? Humanity was always on the danger of an extinction level event. Rapid climate change, asteroid impacts, solar flares, nuclear wars. The director paused. Rosa could see him clenching his fist. Regardless, I've been working on a contingency in case any of these come to fruition. Idvi's voice chirped through the room, catching Rose's attention. Doctor, why are there anti-wombs in there? Well, unfortunately, we can't take risks of any premature contact. The 4 of them looked at the director. This way, the way this works is that it'll stay offline for about 1,000 years, allowing enough time for whatever it is that has destroyed us to vanish. I pressed another button, this time doing something with the projected object. It appeared like some sort of rod was extending from the central cylinder, and at the same time, several smaller rods were outright fired out of the frame. Upon reactivating, it'll send a series of scouting drones and satellite to take the AI Matri and give it an idea of the solution while breeding a new generation of humans. A self-hollow screen appeared before the Phoenixes, displaying a truck rolling out from some mountainside garage. From there, the resettlement efforts begin, and the Demi-Nixes is providing all the projection for the new generation. Demi-Nixes? Rosa raised an eyebrow. And how do we fit into all this? She asked. Why do we need any of this? John looked away from the hologram and addressed her. Because we have 4 stasis pods with your name on it. Her stomach caved in and her heart skipped a beat. What? Is that what he... Her eyes darted to Maria, who seemed sure of what was going on. So this is why you canceled the Future Defenders project? Because you just want to use us to create naturally born warriors? The director stopped leaning on the table. Rosa felt the chill down her spine. Is he going to clone us? You 4 are our best hope of defending the future. Without you, we wouldn't have to be able to get as far as we have with the Ark project. Hell, it wouldn't be complete in time without you 4. He said, slowly pivoting his head to look at each of the 4 women in the room. His back stood straight, his chin was up. It wasn't just a show he was putting up, he meant it. If the legions are still out there, even after the nukes drop, we need you to lead humanity's reconstruction. We'll have a new army of Demi-Nixes created using you 4, along with 4 other women as a genetic template. They weren't just phoenixes because you had what you had in common with the bird. Rosa felt her heart in her throat, her eyes wide and her mouth sealed. We're named that because we're humanity's rebirth. Rosa pieced together, feeling a massive weight now resting on her shoulders. She now understood where this was going. Precisely, John said. On top of that, you 4 will be vital for the completion of the Demi-Nix project. We're still discovering so much about your genetics, and we need more time to get it sorted out before we deploy them en masse. He explained, placing his hands on the table, leaning on it again. But I must warn you, the stasis pods may not be able to preserve your memory. There's a chance you may forget your life here. So, I cannot stress enough how vital you are to our survival of our future. Rose's eyes emptily stared at the hologram projected before her. He can't do this. We're all 18 or 19. We can't do this. She put a hand on her right shoulder. Maria's soft and gentle gaze was fixed on her. Maria felt the warmth slowly feed into her chest, still making her feel like her beating heart as she stared into her twin's eyes. Rosa looked back at the hologram. This thing will come online with or without me. It's going to be a whole generation of humans who'll wonder why I didn't come along. Her eyes sealed shut and her teeth gritted together. She stopped leaning on the table and took a deep breath. Rosa returned to Maria once again, seeing her nod. Rosa, eyes fixed on the director, gave her answer. If it means we won't have to live this miserable life ever again, we'll do it. Oh man, that's the end. Okay.
That was really cool, actually.
Yeah.
Did we start this with girls comparing breast size and then somehow going to the savior of humanity?
Yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah, that's what it felt like.
Apparently, apparently they'll save us by being really hot and by talking in sultry foreign accents.
I gotta say that it was kind of odd. We're off in fantasy land doing our own thing, and then all of a sudden here we are talking about the UN and Latinas and American accents and what the hell is this place?
You're right. Hold on.
Strange fantasy world that we have found ourselves in.
Carl, you're right. I was bored.
It's a really weird world.
Yeah, the comparing breast size was really funny.
That to me just kind of went, okay, I know what kind of story this is. But then it takes a turn and I'm like, what the fuck?
This is not the goresploitation that I was anticipating. What is this ripoff?
Exactly.
Yeah, and they should have been 21 too.
Man.
Yeah, I couldn't figure, like, they actually wrote in the
Accent.
yeah, they actually wrote in the Z's into Angela.
Yeah, I gotta say the word wanker just does not sound right without the British accent to go along with it.
No, it doesn't.
Yes. No.
Wanker.
Well, I prefer the Australian, specifically from the sniper in TF2.
Yeah, everything sounds better in a British accent anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Not inaccurate, I think you'll find.
Oh, very much so.
Mm-hmm.
Very.
It was your world, Becca. Was. You gave it back. That was your mistake.
That is our word. You cannot have it.
Oh, I thought you said world.
Well, that too.
Well, I find that I use that a lot, actually. Well, not so much wanker as a couple of other words. So
Wanker. You sodden wanker.
Bollocks.
yeah, I use sodding a lot.
Yep, the
Yeah.
Brits have lots of cuss words.
Yeah.
Truly, it's the Queen's English.
Learn to read, Turk. Jeez.
Now I'm imagining the Queen talking like that.
I would love to see that. She goes up to Harry and just lays down the law.
I always remember this one routine from Jimmy Carr, this English comedian, and someone once asked him, an American said, "What's it like to have an accent?" And he said, "I don't have an accent. This is how words sound when they are pronounced correctly."
Yes. Quite right. Quite right.
Burn.
Sorry, I got this very expensive microphone in high class mesh in the middle of my screen. I couldn't see the full word.
Yeah, I mean, Americans can't read anyway, so.
Oh, fuck you.
Humble.
Oh,
Fair
no
enough,
way.
Sarah. Fair
Budget.
enough. Pardon me, brightness.
All right, so who's next?
I think it's Carl.
Yeah, Mothmaster had a little bit for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You mind if I go after Carl?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Good.
which was horrible. Like sorry, I don't know how to do a Latin American accent very well. I'm a little bit out of practice, and my German accent is terrible. I apologize.
Oh no!
I could do Latin American, but if I did it, I'm probably going to be taken away by the PC police.
Well,
But then again, my OC in Moth story is Luis Featherwing, and he is a Mexican moth.
Interesting.
All right. Well, here goes. From Mothmaster, the master of mantises. Tonight we dine in the very pits of hellfire, my friends. The High General slammed her hand onto the tavern's table, causing the food to tremble. For the hour of war is at hand. Stuff yourselves and drink to the dregs. We have weapons and armor to forge tonight, and at sunrise, we raid! Elder Moonfall snatched her mug of mead and raised it high into the air, and the soldiers shouted and roared. Tell this to the other barracks. The general panted and looked at one of her most prized champions, Lady Alvar Northwater. The heavily armored Hustaton nodded and dodged her way through the many brass-clad moths and nearly spilled drinks. Her dark gray head turned to the glass window, the candlelight from the lion claw sconce creating a bright glare. She saw a few of the stars and mumbled, "Do protect us, Father." Northwater opened the slightly rotten wooden door and slammed it behind her, the light of the other sconces drawing her head. She opened the door to the barracks and shouted toward the other soldiers, leading her loud, gruff voice echoing past the drinking and devouring. "Guards and soldiers, archsmiths and apprentices, forge your weaponry and armor tonight." The patrons nodded and raised their glasses to her, and she proceeded to call for the others until the night was filled with the clanging of stone against metal and the clashing of swords and axes alike. The heat of the fires warmed the moths to the core as the winter approached them with an icy blast of wind. They scrambled for the docks, and ships were loaded with supplies such as barrels of mead and wine and unburnt coals from the forge houses. Bees' bread were stored in chests and loaded amongst the rotted fruits and seeds, and warm furs and cloths were stashed near the captain's quarters. The immortals began to travel across Adath's wings, and the soldiers ran for the barks and frigates, while the champions protected the supplies in their nearer. Some of the superstitious prayed and tapped the tips of their weapons against the snow and ice to guard against the water beasts, while the others called out for them to quiet themselves. Silent goodbyes and farewells were given from family and friend, and returning veterans banged their fists against the chest plates of the youths. It was as though the entirety of the Hetheran Empire was moving to Grenland, as 60 lives were on every boat, and 70 more on the nearer. The fleet of 400 warships and 240 freighters began to sail. The crisp air provided a mist atop the light blue water, and some of the boats ripped through the most fragile of the ice. The sun was barely visible through the haze, and only the low sound of rippling water and the crackling of the frost underneath the force of the hard oaken wood echoed. General Northwater looked towards one of her mates as she saw him cloak a fellow crewmate in tan lion fur. "Siren, do you know of these waters? Your family sailed these seas, haven't they?" The officer leaned to the youth's ear and whispered, "Don't worry. Everyone gets nervous on their first war." The young ironclad soldier looked up at the scarred moth, and his eyes lit up with trust. Siren helped him up to his feet and nudged him toward the cabins. The general nodded to herself and walked to the old moth. "At least you can keep morale up." She wrapped an arm around his shoulder. "Not many can stomach this kind of stuff." Siren shook his head, and his face turned to one of fatherly concern and worry. "I fear for him, my lady. Northwater silently eyed the grizzled officer as he spoke under his breath. It is always hard to see how these youths learn of war for the first time. The captain stared at the cabins, the same as he did. She sighed. I understand, sir. It was not well my first time. My father was unjustly paid his debt to Adath, and I fear these young soldiers will be done the same. She felt her stomach churn in nervousness at the thought. I'm sorry for your loss, my lady. Siren's antenna flattened against his curled helm. My daughters were taken from me. I never saw them return from that empire. A growl came from him. Northwater's brows furrowed in shock and sadness. I hadn't known you had daughters, Officer Siren. Her eyes filled with tears for a moment. That is rather unfortunate. Have you no more? The old moth paused in thought, then his face turned to hers. I do, but they are not here with us. They have stayed back at home, for they are young. It was clear that his sunken eyes were from nights upon nights of worry, and her hand gently rubbed his shoulder. Siren's knitted brows parted a little from her calm demeanor. He chuckled to himself, then turned to the misty waters. You're a brave one, sailing these seas, he mumbled. They can be tough, sir. Northwater glared at the other barks beside her and saw their captains grouped with their comrades, then turned to Siren. Do you know when we shall make it to the Grenland? The old moth flinched, as though he was just now recognizing her voice. It will take many a day. The winds are unkind to sailors in the morning. The captain stared off into the distant mist until the echo of a familiar horn came from one of the frigates in the back. Hey! What's the matter? Northwater shouted as loud as she could. A pained cry came from the frigate, and a crowd of shouts and roars came from the splashing of the water. Water beast on the starboard! Water beast on them! The yell was cut off short as a loud slam and the shattering of wood was heard. Northwater flinched, and Siren's hand reached for his iron spear. We must fell that beast before it destroys the fleet, he snarled. The captain's wings began to flutter, and Siren grabbed her arm. You cannot fly here. There are white hippogriffs in these seas. Northwater eyed the old moth with an untold word that he had gone mad. We must save them. If I do not make it, then you lead this ship, she growled as she leapt from the edge of the freighter. Siren started to reach for her, but he knew that it was too late to stop the lady. She unsheathed her ash-forged blade and flew for the last frigates. The other captains called out for her to turn back. Lost the position. But she ignored them as she approached the splashing waters. A large sauron beast with jagged scales, a long twisting body, and sharp fangs was tearing through the 200th ship, and soldiers with drawn swords and axes were yelling and cursing the beast. Northwater's wings slowed down their flight and grazed at the monster. She turned to one of the crewmates and grabbed the chest fur. Go for the eyes, you blind bastards! She yelled in his face as she pointed to the beast. The soldier's sword seemed to bounce off its scales, and a loud hiss frightened the youths. Northwater grabbed one of the supplied axes from a dead moth and jumped off the remains of the ship, raising her weapons into the air. She landed on top of the beast's head and slammed both her swords and axe into the eyes, causing it to let out a loud hiss, and the beast writhed in agony. It dove underneath the waters, and the captain watched as its blood began to redden the ice. This isn't right, she thought to herself. Such a beast like this should not be within these cold seas. She thought about the Wutherskal Empire for a moment. Perhaps they sent this beast here. It is not unlike them to use everything they have. The sauron roared and thrashed in the water, slamming its head against the stones and ice repeatedly. Northwater's vision began to dim, and her grip on her weapons began to loosen. Is this how Adath is going to take me? the axe and the sword being tossed from my grip, she thought as she looked at the writhing beast underneath her. By the hand of the Rotherskal Empire. She tilted her head to the barely lit waters above her. Oh, no, I must not give in. Adath, you may have struck down my father early, but you will not strike me down now. She roared and let the beast into the wreckage of the ship, and began to carve into its flesh. The onlooking soldiers watched as the captain went mad upon the Sauron, tearing its scales from its body and severing its bones. She tore the fangs from its skull and reaped it of its venom. The young warriors were horrified, while the veterans had looks that said that this was not her first torrent of madness. Eventually she was covered in blood, and she tossed to one of the few smiths left the skin and bones of the beast. The venom she kept for herself in a satchel wrapped around her chest. The soldiers that remained from the ship's destruction hesitated to ask her any form of a question. The captain of the vessel, Lord Hallinger, stepped forward first. Lady Northwater, do you have another ship that is seaworthy enough to carry... He paused for a moment as his eyes shifted to the moths. 54 warriors. Hallinger started for the lower decks to clean up the remains of the dead, but the captain stopped him. Don't. Let the dead rest in glory. We have no time for a burial. Northwater eyed him. Go and get the living and shift them to the other boats. She glared at the remains of the Sauron beast, its meat and scraps of shattered bones lying in the water. Lord Hallinger began to rally the other troops to fly to the second ship in the line, and some had to be tossed onto it. The supplies were hurried onto various other freighters to keep the weight split apart between them, and the wood and sails from the vessel were done the same. It was this resourcefulness that kept the Helpiran Empire at such an undescribably unique advantage against their seafaring opponents. Lady Northwater was seen striking the flesh of the Sauron, tearing it from muscle to sinew. Hallinger turned from one of the youthful soldiers, and his brow raised in confusion. My lady, what are you doing? We needn't that flesh, do we? The moth didn't look away from her butchering. I do know some that will. The officer did not say anything further, seeing as to how there was no interrogating her for answers. She always had that sense of doing more and asking questions later. Northwater grabbed the Sauron's flesh and tossed it to the gnar beneath them. Keep that for its blood, she yelled. Ah, Hallinger thought. So that's what she's using it for. What a clever lady. Hallinger felt the fur on his chest stiffen up, and one of the veteran soldiers nudged him in the arm. Hey! He spat at the soldier, who chuckled at his flushed face. Northwater flapped her wings and returned to the frigate at the leading edge, and she noticed the Lord's antenna drooping like a piece of cloth on a tree branch. Tut, tut, tut. She rolled her eyes and snickered. How shameful of you, Hallinger. Siren watched as she landed upon the deck. I see that you are... He looked at her blushing face. Well, you look like you've had your fun. Oh, toss it in the water, will you? Northwater nearly raised the sword at the old moth's neck. We must keep alert. She looked at the sun, which was held high in the sky. Siren walked to the lower decks, grabbing a mug and filled it with mead from one of the barrels. The captain turned to the misty water for a moment, seeing as there was no land in sight for a while, then went to the old moth and shoved him aside, but not in a way that meant malice. She filled her mug and the sweet mead and downed it all. Needed that one after the water beast? Siren chuckled as he leaned onto the barrel. The scent of honey was in the room, and Northwater laid a hand on the old moth's shoulder. Aye, I needed it, she grumbled. I butchered that thing alive and stole its venom. The captain reached into her satchel and pulled out the intact glands from the beast. I heard the water, Arvardin, that these are very useful in taking down many a foe. And quite literally, it poisons them, killing them slowly from the inside. She paced around the deck for a moment, then grabbed a few bottles carved from stone. Some were more intricate, with luscious curved designs like spirals, while others were simple. She squeezed the organs, and the venom pooled at the bottom of each one, totaling in 5 full bottles. "You can use it for our arrows." Steven's eyes lit up in interest. "Exactly," Northwater nodded. "And there we shall leave it." I gotta say, Mothmaster, you always give a challenge to my vocal cords.
Yeah. He definitely is a very Beowulf writer.
Yeah, I love it. The style is just so wonderful.
Yeah, simplicity is sometimes the way to go.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very much grand epic.
Yes.
It's straightforward.
It's a very fairy tale-ish kind of thing, but what I mean by that is in terms of its simplicity. But no, a lot of things happen, and I think that really works to his benefit.
Yep.
Yes.
Of course, every time we get into the violent stuff with the moths, I just keep imagining a Saving Private Ryan, but with Mothmaster's moths. Like, you see one grabbing its, fourth leg, trying to drag it out.
Yeah.
Fucking brutal, man. But then again, old fairy tales were pretty fucking brutal.
They were.
Oh, yes.
Watership Down again. Go back to
Yeah.
Watership Down.
That was the other thing I was imagining. Watership Down, but with moths. That's another thing I'm imagining.
Have you read Dunstan Wood? It's got moles instead. It has mole sex scenes.
Ugh.
Yes.
What?
Oh boy.
This universe would be such a wonderful manga.
I-
Or an anime.
No, that's the thing. I think Moth is onto something brilliant here because I can imagine
Uh-huh.
this going so many different mediums. I think he really does have something here.
Yeah, he does. It's
Oh, yeah.
amazing.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes.
I would agree.
Broken Watership Down. He says.
So I believe it's your turn, Tarek?
All right, I'm ready
Oh,
if
yes.
you guys are.
Go ahead.
Go.
Sure.
All right. So, just as a quick refresher from last time we went off, Aviana had spent the rest of the day after she was chewed out by the Archmage trying to find some kind of employment. She did not succeed. Nobody wanted to take her. She went to bed that night, had a horrible nightmare, and when she woke up, her water bucket earlier in the day had fell over, and now she's dealing with the fact she's thirsty but with no water, and that leads us to where we are today. All right. When she arrived at the Melkor River, Aviana gently placed her bucket on the street and stared out towards the flowing water. It was a cloudless night, and the purple, blue, and white colors of the heavens melded beautifully with the black sky, with the brightest light coming from the crescent moon's white glow. She gently pushed some snow off of a stone railing, placed her elbows on the cold stone, and her hands against her chin as she gazed into the infinite. Nights like these always helped her to feel at peace, and soothed her even during her most frustrated moments. While staring into the sky, her eyes were drawn to an arrangement of stars, the brightest of which forming a constellation, Caligor's dagger. Matron Alessa had taught her about the constellation one night, when she couldn't sleep, as well as the story of Caligor. Caligor was the city's first guardian, chosen, and attendant. He was once a mortal who was able to gain Tyrion's favor when he stopped a rampaging horde of wild beasts that had invaded the city when it was still only a small village. With only a dagger for a weapon, he fell banelings, dustfins, and geysers. The battle had cost him both an arm and an eye, but Tyrion was so impressed by the man's strength and courage that he made Caligor his first chosen. Caligor was then given the duty of protecting Tyrion, as well as training others to do so. It was through his tutelage and training that the city's protectors were born, the Guardians. Near the end of his mortal life, and with his role fulfilled, Tyrion came to Caligor with the offer of becoming his first attendant. Agreeing to Tyrion's boon meant life everlasting, as well as the opportunity to accompany Tyrion for the rest of eternity. However, it came with the cost of only being able to walk the earth when the blue magnolias were in bloom, the same as Tyrion. It was said that when Caligor accepted his offer, Tyrion moved the heavens himself to create the dagger, so that even they would never forget his deeds. Aviana's mind wandered as she stared at the constellation. "Will anyone remember me?" she asked quietly before tilting her head down and looking into the water, her reflection staring back at her. Her black hair danced gently in the wind as she began to imagine herself wearing the green robes of the mages. A smile came across her lips as she imagined herself surrounded by friends and loved ones celebrating her ascension. Yet her delight was cut short as the Archmage's cruel words began to echo again, causing the image to fade and return to the familiar, disheveled and starved monster that she always saw. Teardrops dripped down her cheek, and with a cry of frustration, she pushed the remaining snow off the rail. The snow hit the water with a splash, causing her reflection to ripple and disappear. She then bent down, picked up her bucket, and walked down the stone steps to the riverbed. She knelt down at the last stone step and carefully lowered the bucket into the flowing river. She tightened her grip around the handle, not wanting to lose another one to the flowing water. The water pushed against the bucket, filling it, and a moment later she raised it out of the water, causing several splashes of icy water to hit her leg and lap. She gasped in surprise and pain as the water felt like it was burning her flesh. She slowly picked herself up off the step and began slowly walking back up the stairs. Despite her caution, every step caused the water to splash about, resulting in her pants and shirt becoming wetter as she whimpered. When she arrived at the top of the stairs, her teeth began to chatter as the blowing wind only added to her discomfort. The city streets were dark with only the light of the moon to guide her. They were also empty and silent, with the only sound coming from the crunching snow under her feet and the occasional howl of winter winds. The buildings that surrounded her were dark, with their shutters tightly closed or the curtains drawn for the evening. Suddenly, she heard what sounded like falling snow on the ground. Stopping, she looked around for the source of the noise, when she noticed a window on the second floor of a house slowly opening. She quietly dashed to the side of the house and placed the bucket on the ground, before leaning to peek around the corner of the wall. Leaning through the window was a dark figure looking out into the street. It cautiously stepped onto the roof overhanging the first floor and turned around, closing the window behind it without a sound. Aviana could see something in the figure's hand, but was unable to make out what it was before it hid it in its shirt. The figure surveyed the area one last time before silently walking towards the edge of the roof and somehow doing so without a sound. With cat-like grace, the man jumped from one roof to the next, still in silence. Her mind told her to forget what she had just seen and just to go back to the storehouse. However, she would surely be rewarded for catching a thief like this in the act. That would show that miserable Archmage that she was good for more than cleaning bedchambers, and she wasn't about to let the opportunity slip through her numb fingers. Forgetting all about the bucket, she sprinted after the figure as he leapt from roof to roof, landing graceful each time. She made sure to follow from just far enough away to keep an eye on him, and close enough to the buildings so that she wasn't in the middle of the street. Whoever the person was, they were in far better shape than her. And while she didn't see any features on the figure, the shape of it made her think that it had to be a boy, maybe just a bit older than Merrick. Aviana continued to chase the figure for several blocks, her body quickly becoming winded and her breathing ragged. Just as the figure jumped another roof, she stopped and leaned over, panting, her breath visible in the air, and the icy air chomping at her lungs. She lifted her head just in time to see a figure hop off a roof. Despite her body's protest, she sprinted towards the building and she watched him jump from. When she arrived at the building he leapt from, it appeared he leapt into an alley that led to a dead end, yet the figure was nowhere in sight. Aviana hesitantly stepped into the alley, her body damp with sweat and chilled to the bone, causing her to shake and shiver. This was such a stupid idea, she whimpered to herself, looking over her shoulder cautiously and keeping an ear open for any noise. The only thing she heard was the sound of her heart pounding louder and louder in her ear, and the snow crunching under her feet with each step. Her eyes continually darted from left to right, looking for an ambush or anything that appeared to be out of place. Despite her best efforts, she didn't find anything. It was as if the figure had just vanished. But that can't be right. People just don't vanish. I don't even think mages can do that, Aviana thought to herself. While she attempted to think of other explanation, her eyes were drawn to the northwest corner of the wall, and she noticed something wasn't right. There was a shadow in the corner, but the shadow looked somewhat bulky and not flat like a regular shadow. She took a step to the right, never taking her eyes off the spot. As she changed her position, she noticed that the shadow changed shape too. Aviana slowly crouched down without taking her eyes off the corner and quietly dug her numb fingers into the snow. She dug until she found a few small pebbles and took them into her hand. She threw one pebble at the corner only to watch it miss the shadow and bounce off the wall. She threw another only to watch it arc in the air and land in the snow. Qatar! She cried out. She cried out quietly. She took a third one in her hand and took a deep breath, with her eyes focused only on the shadow, blocking out the rest of the world around her. She drew her arm back and then flung it forward, launching the stone as hard as she could. She watched the pebbles soar through the air, straight and true to the corner, when suddenly it hit the black shade without hitting the wall. Aviana couldn't help but beam proudly, her eyes shifting to the stone as it hit the ground. She closed her eyes and felt her body tremble in delight. She couldn't believe she had actually done it. However, her joy was short-lived, as when she opened her eyes and returned her focus to the figure, it was gone. All that remained was the flat stone wall. Without thinking, she bolted for the alley's exit and ran around the building, hoping to pick up the figure's trail again. Aviana didn't know how long she had spent running through the various streets, searching the surrounding rooftops and roads for the figure. In that time, she never found another trace of the mysterious shade. This time, it had truly disappeared. She took a seat on a stone bench underneath a nearby mezzanine and sighed defeated. The chase had left her hungrier and thirstier than when she had started. She was also colder, causing her to rub her arms and chest for warmth. I should probably tell the Guardians about this, she said, hanging her head defeated. After a few moments of rest, she lifted herself off the bench and began to walk back. Just as she was about to turn onto the street she had started from, she noticed two bright lights and heard what sounded like people talking. Aviana peeked her head around the corner and saw two figures holding torches. Both of them looked to be tall, robust men with deep voices. They each wore heavy leather cuirasses, pants, and red cloaks with the hoods covering their head. One had a sword attached to his belt, while the other had a spear hanging from his back. I'm beginning to think Mirith has warmer weather. It snows you around there, the man with the sword spat. There's just no pleasing you, is there? If it was spring, you'd be complaining about the rain. If it was summer, the heat. And if it were fall, I'm sure you'd find a way to complain about the leaves, the man with the spear said. I still don't understand why we're out here. The Chancellor gets robbed, and instead of using the Guardians, he hires mercenaries as lookouts at his expense. What kind of logic is that? The man with the sword asked. My guess is the Chancellor wants to deal with the culprit himself. I heard he was a particularly vindictive man in his youth, the man with the spear replied. Oh, I've heard that. I even heard the man would put the screws to anyone who crossed him, and that was if he liked you, the man with the utter. I'd hate to get on the man's bad side. The other man nodded in agreement and turned their backs to Aviana. The other man nodded in agreement. The two then turned their backs to Aviana and marched towards the direction of the river. Aviana waited until they had turned the corner and disappeared from the street before walking back to her bucket. By the time she had arrived, the surface of the water had formed a thin sheet of ice and frost. She licked her parched lips and let out a raspy cough from her dry throat. Looking at the ice-covered water, she held her breath and braced herself. She dunked her hands into the bucket, the ice shattering as they plunged into the water. She whimpered and quickly retreated her hands from the bucket and poured the water into her mouth and swallowed. The icy water stung her mouth and throat, burning them, but she readied herself to take another plunge. She took several more handfuls before stopping, her body trembling and her lips like ice. Her hands were shaking. and numb. She quickly wrapped them in her cloak and waited for the feeling to return to them. As she waited, she felt as though something was watching her, causing her to carefully observe the area around her as she trembled. Suddenly, she noticed a figure standing on a roof, its form silhouetted by the moon. The figure made no attempt to hide, and Aviana's legs felt too weak and numb to even attempt to flee. It was a different figure than the one from before. This one looked like an adult with a taller and stronger build. Her body felt even colder as the figure watched her, and she began to involuntarily squirm like prey being hunted. The thought of screaming for help had crossed her mind, but by the time anyone got to her, assuming anyone would, it would probably be too late. Suddenly, the figure raised an arm and threw something at her. She closed her eyes and flinched, turning away, awaiting for pain. After a moment of feeling nothing but the cold, she turned back towards the roof, but the figure was gone. Just like the other one, there were no signs he had ever been there. Aviana unraveled her hands from her cloak and picked up an object embedded in the snow at her feet, a silver coin. Aviana observed the trinket quickly before putting it in her cloak pocket. Confused, she picked up the bucket and began her long walk back to the storehouse. When Aviana awoke the next morning, light was directly shining on her face from the hole above, causing her eyes to open. Her body felt sore, her mind hazy. Without thinking, she lowered her head into the bucket to refresh herself. Her hand broke through a thin layer of ice and into the water, causing her to yelp in surprise and wakefulness. After the initial shock, she braced herself and dipped her hand back into the bucket and quickly drank. As she dried her hands against her burlap bed, she looked into the water. The reflection staring back at her was even worse than usual. There were dark bags under her eyes. Her hair was messy with strands sticking out in every direction, and her already pale skin looked even lighter than usual, with her lips a darkened shade of blue. She quickly turned away from the horrifying sight, reached into her bed, and pulled out her food sack. Looking at her remaining provisions, she still had the bread from the day before, as well as small pieces of jerky and cheese. She took a small bite of cheese, but continually eyed the recently acquired bread as the dried and bitter food hit her tongue. She shuddered as she tasted the aged and refined cheese, causing the coins in her pocket to jingle and clang. As she heard the noise, her thoughts turned to the events from the night before, as well as the silver coin she had picked up from the ground. She moved her free hand to the pocket and fished around, grabbing a handful of coins and pulled them out. She then opened her hand, letting the coins fall onto the wooden floorboards as they clinked and clanked, bouncing against each other. Buried within the gold was the silver coin, which she had picked up in her free hand and held to the light. The coin looked pretty old, with the silver metal tarnished, the sides thin and misshapen, and the imprint of a bird was worn down, making it look as though it had melded with the coin. She was almost convinced that the night's events were another dream, yet the coin proved otherwise. Suddenly, she felt her eyes go wide as an idea began to form. She took the rest of the cheese in her hand and shoved it down her mouth, bypassing her tongue, and swallowed. After quickly packing away the remaining food and putting the Dharma from the floor into her pocket, Aviana got onto her feet and sprinted for the storehouse stairs. The Chancellor's looking for a thief. I saw him, and I have proof I did. If I bring this coin to him, he might reward me, Aviana thought excitedly, her heart racing as she ran down the stairs without regard for the way they wobbled and shook. By the time she reached the door, she quickly opened it only to find Merrick on the other side. You're up late. I was thinking I would have to search all morning to find you, Merrick said. Oh, thank Tyrion you're here. Merrick, listen, something happened last night and Aviana began, but was stopped when Merrick put up his hand. Before you say anything, I have something to tell you, Merrick said, taking a deep breath. Aviana looked at her friend and noticed his body was stiff, much stiffer than she had ever seen him. His fists were clenched with his dirty fingernails digging into his flesh, and his body was trembling, as were his lips. It was then she noticed that his face was bruised and he had small cuts all over his arms. It also looked as though his clothes had new rips and tears since she had seen him the previous day. Despite all this, his eyes looked brighter than she had ever seen them. Are you all right? Aviana asked, feeling her initial excitement waning. Merrick walked through the storehouse door and closed it behind him, then past Aviana, keeping his back turned. Merrick mumbled as he fidgeted with his fingers. Merrick, what happened? Aviana asked, starting to feel her heart race again as she watched her friends shake and squirm. Merrick took a deep breath and relaxed his shoulders before exhaling and turning around, revealing the largest smile she had ever seen. Last night, I came across a thief trying to mug a merchant near the bazaar. Without thinking, I ran to the merchant's aid. I was able to get in a good few hits, but he was too much for me, Merrick said, unbuttoning his shirt, revealing his torso covered in black and blue marks. A few moments later, the Guardians arrived, being led by Captain Alexandros Harlow. They arrested the man, and Captain Harlow said he saw what happened and was so impressed that he wanted to recruit me for the Guardians right there, Merrick announced excitedly. That's amazing. Did you accept? Aviana asked excitedly, with a large smile forming on her face. Merrick suddenly stopped and lowered her head. He took another deep breath, and after exhaling, all excitement evaporated from his face. I did. He said to use today to get my affairs in order. I'm to report to the city gate this evening. From there, the other recruits and I will be taken to Karen for training. He also told me I won't be back for a long time. How long is a long time? Aviana asked, her voice trembling. I don't know, but I was hoping. Would you please come with me to say goodbye to everyone? Merrick asked, his voice shaking and his blue eyes darkening with worry. All thoughts of the mysterious coin and meeting with the Chancellor had left her mind as Merrick made his request. Aviana knew what she meant, and without thinking, she reached out and gripped Merrick's hand tightly. She looked into his eyes and gave the most comforting smile she could muster. The uncertainty in Merrick's face was slowly replaced with gratitude as his eyes began to brighten again. Without a word, the two of them quietly walked out of the storehouse, hand in hand, closing the door behind them. And that's it for this week.
Nice.
Excitement and heartbreak.
I'm very happy for him. But it's also worrying because he's not going to be there for her, just like he said he wouldn't be.
Yeah.
I love Aviana, though.
Yes, very engaging.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep, he has our sympathies.
Oh yeah, we wanted to see something good happen to her eventually.
Yeah. So we've had a bunch of extra people show up. I think we've had like 5 readings already, and we're nearly at the 2-hour mark. And I need to run to Smudcast in a few minutes.
Oh.
So, unfortunately, we'll probably have to cut it short here.
I don't mind not reading.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah, well, I'm probably gonna I think we'll probably just end it right here. We might just end it right here since I gotta get going. But this has been a good one. I think that I'll definitely have to keep it to 5. And kind of say, okay, we'll put you on for next week, even if they are I think what threw me off was 2 extra people who were asked to have their stuff read, kind of through.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and made things kind of take a little bit longer than usual, but we'll definitely do this. We'll do this again next week. It's if anybody wants to come on or would like to have their stuff read, please contact me in the Writer's Showcase response section, Writer's Showcase request section. Anybody who wants to come can come on. It's first come, first serve, but there are 5 slots, and that's the arbitrary limit that I'm going to place on it just for time constraints.
All right.
Okay.
That works for me.
Alrighty. So, and you definitely just tag me. I know that we have a few regulars here who like to come on consistently, but I know a lot of other people would like to. But so if anybody wants to come on, feel free to ask me. But it's first come, first served. And if I don't fill the spots, I'll have. That's just what's gonna happen. The regulars will just come back.
Hey, Dunn, you mind if I plug my story real quick, my
Yes.
Amazon?
Oh, yes.
Okay, just real quick. I recently published the first Tales from Tyrion on my Amazon under the pseudonym James Thomas. This is a story that takes place after the first book. Don't worry, there's no spoilers, like nothing you guys don't already know. And it is essentially what happens after the first book. Tales of Tyrion is going to be an anthology series sometimes following Aviana, but more so other characters like Mikhail, Tarek, Merrick. Yeah, that does rhyme. Anyways, it's going to be from the point of view of other characters and not just Aviana. That's probably going to be slow going, but the first one is out on my Amazon, and I think Dunk put the link to my Amazon in the description.
I will definitely put that in the description once I get finished. Once I have the ability to.
All right.
Okay, good. Because there's also a link to the bunny, the weird teenage postmodern bunny story. It's on the web.
Alrighty. Well, thank you all for coming. If you want, just let us know if you would like to come on. This is a first come, first serve thing. It doesn't really matter. And if you want somebody else to read for you, I'll totally do that. Anyway, we will see you guys later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.